Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm going to talk to you today about the Battle of Leyte Gulf in the Pacific theater of World War II. Okay, Leyte is a central island in the center of the Philippines. Okay, it's not the main island. The main island is Luzon. Luzon and the rest of the Philippines were liberated a few months later. But in late October, early November 1944, the U.S. liberated the island of Leyte. And the U.S. Army were the landing troops, but they met minimal ground resistance from the Japanese soldiers in Leyte, and that was large in part mostly due to the U.S. Navy battleships. The U.S. Navy battleships bombarded the shores of Leyte, and they bombarded them very, very well. So the U.S. Army soldiers could advance and take Leyte, the island of Leyte, with minimal resistance. So God bless the U.S. Navy battleships for that. Okay. There were the two predominant Japanese battleships in this battle were the Yamato and the Musashi. Okay. These were the largest battleships in the world. Okay. They were 863 feet in length, 172 feet wide. They weighed 72 tons, and the predominant weapon was 18.1-inch guns. Okay, the Musashi was sunk in this battle. It was aircraft from many different carriers: the USS Enterprise, the USS Intrepid, the USS Lexington. From many different carriers, they jointly sank the battleship, the Musashi. And God bless the aircraft, the carrier aircraft from those carriers. Because the Musashi was the largest battleship in the world, it was able to withstand a lot of punishment. And now that the Musashi was knocked out of commission and sank, that really reduced Japan's naval capabilities very, very well. It really helped the U.S. win the war in the Pacific theater, where Korea was liberated, as well as the Philippines being liberated and many other islands in the Pacific. Also, with the U.S. taking Leyte and eventually the U.S. taking the Philippines, that kept Japan away from their oil supplies in the Dutch East Indies, so that the Americans had control of the Philippines. They were able to divide Japan, the main island of Japan, from where its oil supply was. And the Battle of Leyte Gulf really laid down the groundwork for liberating the Philippines. And also, there were some lighter Japanese battleships that got damaged first. They were damaged to where at the first part of the battle, they had to slow down, so they couldn't get to Leyte and couldn't get to the U.S. as quick as they would have liked. And there was a squadron of F-4 Wildcats as well as scout bombers. And the interesting about this is when their battleships and aircraft carriers, when they fired defensive flak, when they fired flak, anti-aircraft fire, the fire from each ship was a different color. So the ships could identify which carrier's fire or which battleship's fire hit the American airplane. And the F-4 squadron Commander Bakatis, unfortunately, his plane was shot down. Now, he survived the crash. He had an oil leak. He had an oil leak, so he had to ditch his plane. But he survived. He had a little raft. He was able to deploy his little raft, and an American destroyer picked him up at the end of the battle. So, and God bless Bakatis for making it back alive. Okay, we talked about that. Okay, the two U.S. fleets that were part of this battle were the 3rd Fleet and the 7th Fleet. Okay, the 7th Fleet consisted of mostly escort carriers, small aircraft carriers, but they also had some cruisers, they had some destroyers, they had some cruisers, they had some destroyers, and they had a few submarines as well. The 7th Fleet was under the command of Rear Admiral Thomas Kincaid. He was a tough man from New Hampshire. And the 3rd Fleet was under command of a Texan, somebody from Texas. His name was Bull Halsey, and his motto was hit hard, hit fast, hit often. Okay? Well, the 7th Fleet at one point, particularly at the end of the battle, was left by themselves because Bull Halsey believed the Japanese distraction. Japan had their aircraft carrier Zuikaku, as well as a lot of other ships that were going to try to distract the 3rd Fleet. So Japan could try to go to Leyte Island and retake Leyte, and then take out the small American fleet. But the small American fleet, the 7th Fleet, held on. And there was an officer named Jack Evans who was aboard a ship, the USS Johnston. He really told the U.S. to go in, to take out the Japanese, to do all that, and he did that. Unfortunately, he passed away doing that, but his sacrifice was not in vain. They hit Japan so hard that Japan honestly believed there were a lot of, that the 7th Fleet was a lot larger than they actually were. So, I mean, usually in the military they address you by their last name, and it had the rank of commanders. God bless Commander Evans for that. Brave, brave man. God bless the U.S. Navy and God bless the U.S. Army for their accomplishments at Leyte. Okay? They did amazing things, and this eventually led to the complete liberation of the Philippines. This was definitely a starting point for it. And the battleship, the Musashi, the Japanese battleship, was able to withstand a lot of punishment. But the U.S. planes, they kept bombing them and bombing them and bombing them, and eventually they sank the battleship, the Musashi. And this was one of the 2 largest battleships in the world. And this was key to American superiority in the seas, in the Pacific theater of World War II. So God bless the U.S. sailors and the U.S. soldiers and the U.S. Marines, or Marines aboard ships that were gunnery officers. Gunnery officers. So God bless the U.S. Marines as well. And God bless the U.S. sailors, the soldiers, and the Marines that fought in Leyte Gulf. The sacrifices are not in vain. So I hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.